In the late 1980s, Boston set out to do something no American city had ever attempted before, a plan to bury its elevated Central Artery Highway and rebuild the entire heart of the city from the ground up. It became known as the Big Dig. Hidden beneath downtown streets was a plan for underground highways, new rail links, and a transformed waterfront. Today, most people only know the Big Dig for being a budget disaster, but it was actually just a fraction of the story. Most of the original vision was quietly erased from the blueprints. Today we're uncovering the hidden rail links and futuristic tunnels that never happened. You need to stick around because the real story isn't about the tunnels that exist today, but the massive transit revolution that was lost. We're going to break down exactly how politics, financial collapse, and fatal engineering mistakes tore the plan apart, leaving the city with a broken promise. By the end of this video, you'll understand the tragic cost of cutting corners and exactly what infrastructure is still missing today. Before we dig into Boston's lost mega-project, make sure to unearth that subscribe button for the latest mega-projects around the world. To see why it was stopped, we need to go back to the moment when Boston thought it was about to change its entire future. You will see how the scale of this plan still feels unbelievable. The grand vision was not a small fix. It was a plan to rebuild Boston's entire transportation core from the inside out. The elevated Central Artery was old, overcrowded, and hated by almost everyone. It carried almost 200,000 cars a day when it had been designed for less than half that. The city knew it was dealing with a ticking time bomb. So planners came up with a solution that didn't just push the limit. It threw the limit out the window. They wanted a new underground highway system running straight through Boston's densest streets. This included a brand new route beneath South Station, a deeper tunnel under Fort Point Channel, and a major redesign of every interchange feeding I-93 and I-90. The connection to Logan Airport would no longer depend on confusing ramps and surface traffic. Instead, cars would move directly from the highway into the New Harbor Tunnel in a clean, straight path. That alone felt like a revolution. The drawings also showed something Boston had never seen before, a full chain of open green space stretching across the footprint of the old elevated highway. A long linear park that would bring light, air, and actual public space back to a part of the city that had been dark for 40 years. Designers wanted plazas, fountains, walkways, trees, and places where people could finally breathe instead of listening to metal shake above their heads. But the real excitement came from the engineering ambitions. The plan called for one of the most advanced ventilation systems ever built in the United States. It demanded a completely new set of tunnels beneath active subway lines. It included a new river crossing designed to carry 10 lanes of traffic without blocking the skyline. It even included early planning for a rail link that would unite Boston's two major train stations, a connection the city had failed to build for more than a century. Every part of this vision was meant to fix something that had been broken for decades. Boston's traffic, its layout, its waterfront, its growth, and its future. And for a moment, it looked like the city was finally ready to reshape itself from the ground down. But that grand vision came crumbling down when reality hit the project from every direction. There were political, financial, technical, and even underground challenges. The first shock was politics. The state needed federal money, but Washington called the plan too expensive. In 1987, Congress approved funding, and President Reagan immediately vetoed it. When Congress overruled him, the project got the green light, but also gained national attention as a risky bet. From that moment, every move and mistake became a political weapon. Then came the neighborhoods. Boston's North End had already suffered in the 1950s when the original elevated highway ripped through homes and businesses. As soon as residents heard the words "new construction," they feared another round of disruption. Community groups formed committees to fight for protections, updates, and compensation. The project had to respond with dozens of agreements and promises before digging could even begin. And below the surface, the problems multiplied. Much of downtown Boston stands on old landfill, packed with weak soil, hidden debris, and unstable layers. The deeper the crews looked, the stranger things became. They found old sewer lines that no one knew existed, buried building foundations, and even sunken ships from earlier centuries. Each surprise forced design changes, new permits, and then, as expected, additional delays. The engineering challenges were just as stressful. tunnels had to pass under live subway tracks near South Station. Those tracks carried more than 400 trains a day. Stopping service was not an option, so engineers used ground freezing, supercooling the earth to keep it stable. It's a method that had never been attempted at this scale in an American city. It worked, but it added more time and cost. Then came the river. The Charles River crossing triggered a massive fight with neighbouring Cambridge over a design known as Scheme Z, which would have created ugly, massive ramps. The entire river plan had to be redesigned from the ground up into the cable-stayed bridge we see today. And while all this was happening, traffic still had to flow. The old elevated highway stayed open during construction, which meant crews were digging, drilling, and installing tunnel sections under a live roadway. One wrong move could have shut down entire sections of the city. Day by day, the cost increased. The Big Dig began with a promise of about $2.6 billion, but by 1994 it jumped to $10.4 billion. And by the time the project wrapped up, the final cost over $14.8 billion plus interest. It became one of the most expensive public works efforts in US history, and that alone turned public opinion upside down. But the cost wasn't the only issue. Soon after major sections opened, engineers found hundreds of leaks inside the tunnels. Water pushed through cracks and seams, especially around South Station and the harbour area. Some leaks carried salt water, which started wearing down steel supports and fireproofing. Pumps had to remove huge amounts of water every month. Reports later confirmed that officials knew about many leaks earlier but failed to share the full details. Then, investigators uncovered a concrete problem. A major supplier had delivered weak or reused concrete, and even billed for loads that were never poured. Several employees faced criminal charges, and the company paid $50 million in penalties and repairs. But the most devastating moment came in 2006. A ceiling panel inside the I-90 connector tunnel fell onto a passing car, killing Milena Del Valle and injuring her husband. The investigation found that the epoxy holding the bolts in place was not designed for long-term overhead loads. The anchors weakened over time, and no one caught it. After the collapse, emergency inspections and tunnel shutdowns followed. More problems surfaced during these inspections. Nearly 25,000 tunnel lights were attached to metals that corroded quickly. One fixture had already fallen into the roadway. The entire lighting system had to be replaced, which cost tens of millions. And even the guardrails inside the tunnels became controversial. Their sharp, squared design was linked to several severe injuries and deaths in crashes. Officials eventually removed or modified sections near curves and ramps. Each new revelation pushed the project deeper into public distrust. This is why the dream of a perfect infrastructure project never became a reality. So when everything started falling apart, what did Boston actually lose? The most painful loss was the better version of the Big Dig itself. People forget this, but the final project was not the original plan. The early vision had more transit, more surface changes, more public space, and a stronger transportation system. One major loss was the full transit package that Boston was promised to balance all the new highway work. The red-blue connector, which would have fixed the awkward split between two major subway lines, was dropped from the list. The return of the Green Line streetcars to Arbor Way and Jamaica Plain was abandoned after years of delays and a final court ruling. Another loss was the north-south rail link. The final design of the harbour tunnel left no room for trains because the roadway had to be placed deeper and equipped with stronger ventilation for diesel traffic. The rail tunnel was quietly removed from the project. This single choice locked Boston into the broken rail layout it has today. Two major stations, less than a mile apart, that cannot connect. Surface improvements were also cut back. The Artery Arts program was supposed to give Boston a modern public art corridor built into the new landscape. Dozens of proposals were approved. Only a handful survived the budget cuts. Even simple features like pedestrian bridges, waterfront connections, and continuous pathways were delayed or postponed. So after everything Boston gained and everything it lost, what can today's planners learn from the rise and fall of the Big Dig? It's that early planning must be honest. The Big Dig didn't fall apart because of one failure. It fell apart because dozens of small risks were not understood in time. The city didn't have updated maps of utilities. They didn't know the real condition of old sewer pipes or buried infrastructure. Some utilities shown on drawings, as built, didn't exist. Others were in the ground but never documented. This forced emergency redesigns, schedule jumps, and hundreds of millions in new contracts. Modern projects need full underground mapping before anything begins. Another lesson is that integration must happen early. The Big Dig used a traditional design-bid-build system, which kept designers and builders separate. The project team only became fully integrated in 1998, when the design was basically finished and construction was already halfway done. At that point, major issues were locked in. Today, design-build teams work together from day one, share risk, and prevent the kind of confusion Boston faced. Boston's story shows that scale alone is not the problem. Poor preparation is. If modern cities want to build their own big plans, they need to build smarter, not just bigger. Boston's Big Dig stands as a complicated monument to human ambition, a project that successfully stitched a broken city back together, yet remains forever haunted by the staggering financial cost of its compromised safety and erased promises. It was a vision that freed the North End from the shadow of the highway, but in doing so buried the rail connections that could have truly modernised New England. In my view, while the surface parks are a triumph of urban healing, the project ultimately serves as a dark cautionary tale. It proves that no amount of engineering genius can bury the consequences of political short-sightedness, and that the cost of cutting corners is a debt eventually paid in human lives. But I want to turn this over to you. Looking at the final price tag and the crucial transit links that were sacrificed to pay for it, do you believe the Big Dig was a necessary evil for Boston's survival, or a historic failure of imagination? And if you want to uncover more stories where engineering meets history, exploring the blueprints that build and sometimes break our world, make sure to subscribe to Design Zip. We have many more architectural deep dives coming soon. I'll see you in the next one.